Hey, what's up? Quick video today, hopefully. But it's going to be a two-part series. In this video, I'm going over how to create space for your vocals in a two-track beat. And then the next one, I'm going to be going over how to actually mix those vocals into the two-track. Okay, so for this session, I'm going to be using my instrumental cover of Nelly Furtado's Say It Right, the Tame Impala version that they did on BBC One a while ago. I don't know how long ago when you're watching this, but a while ago. And the vocalist I'm using for this session is Mohv, so let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing you want to do when you start mixing is give your beat some headroom. So we're going to go over to the beat and go to its clip gain and lower it anywhere from -5 to -7 dB. And we want to do this instead of using the volume fader because the fader is what you would call a post fader, meaning that the volume change would only take effect after the effects, and we want the volume change to happen before the effects, so it gives the effects headroom as well. Cool. So we gave our beat some headroom. Now we want to start adding some effects to our beat. And the first thing we should do is make sure our bass is in mono. So over here I have this utility plugin. I'm going to activate it, and it already has this bass mono that I have set up over here. In general, you want to have the frequencies below 100 Hertz in mono because essentially this will give you more headroom down the line and it cleans up your mix. If you don't have a utility plugin that can make your bass mono, another thing you could do is to set up an EQ, put it in mid-side mode, and on the side section of the EQ, take out all the frequencies below 100 Hertz. This is effectively making your bass mono. Next, so we've given ourselves headroom, made the bass mono. Now, if you want to enhance our beat in any kind of way, we should do that now. So a few things you could do quickly is just to add a transient shaper to make your mix a little bit more punchy, give it more life. A free one over here is this plugin called Bittersweet. If you want your track to feel a little bit warmer, you can add a saturator. You can also use an EQ to boost or lessen the volume of certain instrument frequencies. You can do that by, or I suggest you use an instrument frequency chart like this one to find the relative frequency range where those instruments would be, and use that to fine tune the beat. I use this on the drums with this EQ. So over here, I boosted this frequency for the fatness of the kick and this one for the thumpiness of the kick. And over here, I just boosted the highs because I thought the beat needed it. You can also use an EQ to widen your mix using mid-side mode and left-right mode. While mid-side mode might be a little bit more obvious, I also suggest using left-right mode to widen your mix because essentially, getting into the science of it, you get the perception of width from little differences in volume, delay, and pitch between the left and right ears, and in this case, channels. So any little thing that you change in the frequencies of the left and right ear will give the listener a better sense of width. Now, whether or not you can hear. Next. Okay, so now we want to actually create space for our vocals. The frequency range where the vocals have clarity is in the 2 to 6 kilohertz range. So going into our EQ, you want to make a little cut around that area. A quick way to actually find where that area is to locate where the snare is and dip a little bit right where that is. And we want to dip and push back on the snare because the snare is one of those instruments that is going to be constantly competing for not only frequency space, but also attention from the listener. And we want that attention to be on the vocal, so we cut a little bit, we dip a little bit back on the snare. So over here on my EQ, I have it a little bit over 2K because that's where I found the clap was in this case. So let's just hear how that sounds. So if carving out space didn't do enough for you, another thing you could do is add a sidechain to the beat. Now, what a sidechain will do is every time your vocal is present, it will lower the volume of the beat. And so to set that up, you put a compressor on your beat, activate the sidechain mode, get the audio input from your vocal, your main vocal, and then we want to adjust the ratio, the attack, the release, and threshold. And here is an exaggerated version of what the sidechain would sound like. So you can hear the sidechain is really ducking down the volume of the instrumental. So here's a less exaggerated version of what it would be doing. Now, a final way you can create space for your vocals is by using a dynamic EQ. A dynamic EQ is basically a combination of the EQ and the sidechain because it will dynamically lower the volume of just one specific frequency range. So I'm going to be using this free dynamic EQ called TDR Nova. And to set this up, make sure you have the external sidechain selected over here. It's probably going to be on internal sidechain. So external sidechain. Then go through and find your sweet spot again with the frequency. I'm using band 3, by the way. And then put in roughly the same settings with your ratio, your attack and release. And then when you listen, adjust threshold accordingly. So I'm going to show you an exaggerated version of what this would sound like. Just pay close attention to what the highs or how the highs drop out and the lows are still present. So here's exaggerated. Now let's do a normal example. For this one, pay attention to the volume of the claps and the high synths behind the vocal. All right, so those are some ways to create space for your vocals in a 2-track beat. In the next one, I'm going to be going over how to actually mix the vocals in so they're not as dry and exposed to the world like they are now. So definitely watch out for that. All right, see you then. Hopefully that recorded, because if it's not,